Welcome to Decoding the Childcare Business. I'm so glad you joined me. Thank you for subscribing and for liking this video. Also, thank you for all the comments that you have shared. Please be sure to let me know what state you're tuning in from so we can, before start forming our community, I'm working on the community on YouTube. Please stay tuned for ways for us to have more engagement. This is a new channel, and your subscription and like will help us continue to bring this programming to you. We're going to expand on what we spoke about at episode number 8, the commercial lingo. We're going to discuss commercial real estate requirements, and I hope that you'll be able to start putting together your business financial plan. I'm so excited. Thank you for joining. In this video, we're going to cover commercial building structures and why they matter for childcare. We're going to talk about who actually has to say in your design and approvals and how that process works. Because if you don't know all the players in your particular municipality or town, you can be churning like a hamster on a wheel, feeling that you have all the answers, but you don't, because there are more people involved than just the Department of Licensing. We're going to talk about how commercial leases really work. We're going to talk about the impact of rent in commercial leases. Again, it's important to understand how the base rent for your commercial lease is calculated. We're going to talk about capacity, square footage, and how space connects to revenue. We're going to close with doing your due diligence before signing anything critical. So get ready, take a deep breath. You know, this journey is a journey of love, because I just heard someone tell me yesterday, Zuli, you could charge for this information. But I have honestly been blessed. I've been blessed by having the capacity to understand the business side and also the pedagogical side. I've been blessed to be able to get both a master's in business and also to have a master's in education. I come from a world of education. So what I'm sharing with you is to really guide you in the process of becoming profitable. I want to be able to develop systems for you to be able to engage and take the guesswork out of numbers. I remember being a little bit confused, not sure what questions to ask, not having someone that had the scope and breadth of all aspects of what I was asking for. And again, one of the best things that I ever did was hire that consultant that I told you about in my prior episode earlier on, because she not only had a business sense, but she also had a childcare industry sense and had access to so many childcare programs. By bringing this information to you, things that I personally benefited from and continue to benefit from to this day, I feel is going to be really, really helpful in understanding that there are ways that you can position yourself in this business, be profitable, exit, and have a dignity of life. We should be able to do something we love, be profitable doing it, and retire from it with dignity. And I hope that you get that from me here. Okay? Like Hines, your host, here we go. Get your pen and paper ready, because we are getting into it, folks. And if you're interested in me going live so we can have real live question and answer session on a Sunday at 8, can you put live in the comment below? I'm not sure if I'm going to go live on YouTube or that you send me your email address and we'll have a live Zoom session for about 2 hours to discuss the past 2 months of episodes that I have delivered for you. If you want to be with me on a live session, let me know. Put the word live below. Send me an email. Go right to my website. Log into www.beyondbasiclearning.com. Fill out the information and put in the comments that you would like to go live. And I will plan a live session for us to discuss the childcare business and the various topics that we have discussed to this point. Make sense? We're going to talk about construction red flags. When you start your childcare program, it's very important that you understand whether that building is in a pre-existing, non-conforming ordinance, meaning the town has allowed the business to continue to exist as a pre-existing structure. And that if you decide to go ahead and put a childcare center in that building, or you decide to buy a standalone site, you need to understand if that site will be required to be brought to code. And if you need to bring a site to code, I've been there. We have a commercial restaurant that was pre-existing, non-conforming. And as we tried to bring it to code, it would mean that the cement, the sidewalks would have to be done according to the Department of Transportation. Lighting would have to be updated. Electrical would have to be updated. The frame would have to be updated. That means that it would have to go from a wood frame to a stud frame, and certain types of sheetrock would need to be used. You need to have fiber rated walls. All of that is part of upgrading a building that had been pre-existing non-conforming. Folks, that's very expensive. We're talking about sprinklers. We're talking about fire department rated materials. We're talking proper insulation. Maybe there's no insulation. We're talking about water fixtures. And if you have a well, then how does the water get disposed into the well? Or if you have municipality water, it's a different cost. You may have to upgrade the wires and even the wattage of power that comes to your particular site. You might have to call the power authority to bring more voltage to the side of your building, which then requires a converter to transfer that power into usable work power that then can be channeled into the building. And I did that too. I had a space, my second location, where there was a transformer, and it was so powerful that I needed to then bring a different type of electrical panel to cap the power so it could be safe to then distribute it to outlets like fixtures, washer and dryers, things like that. And that can run up the cost tremendously. So I want you to understand a wood frame type of structure is that where you want to build your childcare program. And if you're buying a site, or if you are leasing a commercial site, then is the landlord asking you to be responsible for the full build out, which normally they do. And if it's a wood frame, then do the town want you to bring it to code? Do you need ordinance? And that can delay the project. It could go from 6 months, a year, to maybe 3, because now the town board is involved and you have to go to hearings, get it approved, get it on the docket, get the building department to approve it. And it's very lengthy and very costly. And so you really need to understand the building structure. Now, for me, when I was building my site, I had other challenges. So now we're talking about commercial spaces that are fireproof, not combustible, in a cement frame. My building was actually on the waterfront. Because my building was on the waterfront, my building was built on piles. You wonder, what the heck, Missouli, is piles? Piles are these really huge columns that must penetrate all the way down to the bedrock of the river where my school was located. And those piles was what supporting the whole building structure. What did that mean for me? That when I wanted to build toilets, when I wanted to build rooms, I had to make sure that the cement that I was building onto had to be x-rayed. And it had to be x-rayed at a certain time because we have tenants, and there had to be people there to ensure that when we cut into the slab of cement, we were not cutting into wires or plumbing that could impact the building overall. So steel and concrete construction, which is preferred. You want to be in a building that is built out of steel construction, but then that also comes with its own challenges, because those challenges mean that you have to know what is underneath that concrete. Is there a garage underneath the concrete? That happened to me too. When I built my second location, I built on top of a garage. So the garage underneath had wires and plumbing and other electrical circuits going through that I had to be conscientious of. It's great to build with concrete, but the challenges are still real, and they can really run up the budget, and they can get super expensive. So when you're looking at commercial spaces, you want to say, okay, what is the cost to build here? Will the landlord give me any leniency in building? And we're going to talk about how to negotiate the lease. But for now, you need to understand if the wood frame is up to code or is not up to code. Do you need to get an ordinance? And how do you find this out? How do you really find this information? You got to go to the building department. You have to go to the building department. You got to find out what type of approval that building has. Is it zoned for that type of business, or is it licensed for that type of business? Oftentimes, the city will permit a particular use of land for a business. Where I have one of my properties, the land has been allowed to be used as a mixed-use space for business and residential. This is about urban planning, not child safety. What happens is the urban planners and the city or the town decides this area is going to be for business or zoned for business, and this area is going to be only residential, and this area is going to have a mixed use of residential and businesses. It doesn't mean that just because the town went ahead and took that swath of land and categorically said it's a business, that just because the structure exists, your childcare center can exist. That's different. That goes to a licensing. and the state certifies building is safe for children. This involves strict fire department regulations, health, and building code. A big thing to remember is that when you build for infant program, you're building to the strictest code imaginable for safety, fire drills, exit plan, and various type window access. So building for an infant program is the strictest level of construction that you can possibly have. So when you go from building for an infant program, and then you go and you build for a toddler program 2.5 and older, the building department has different regulations. When I built my first school, I had a space that was 3,742 square feet on the waterfront. However, the question became of exit and how to create an infant space within this large space that would be allowed for infants to be there, because the whole space was not applicable for infants, but a part of it was allowed to be used for infants. And what determined that was for me to build a fire-rated wall. Yes, you need to understand that. Don't just walk away from a great space simply because you cannot have infants across all the space. Think about where can I have infants and what will make the space usable for infants. You need to ask those questions. Those questions are so important because you can close yourself out of a very good space because you felt that the space overall did not have the capacity to hold infants. I'm telling you right now, from my own personal experience, when I built my first school, I was able to look at the space in totality and say, if I want to have infants in this space, what does that mean for you, Mr. Building Department? What does that mean for you, Mr. Fire Marshal? And that's where the light bulb went on. Let's build a fire-rated wall, and let's put it right here. And that wall will be a demising wall, meaning that it will create a barrier where infants can be on one side of the building. Now, once you build for infants, any other issue can exist there. You get it? Once you build for infant, which is the strictest and most difficult form of build-out that you must have, everything else can occupy that space. And you're ready then to have a space that is flexible and that can move and change with the times. But the key is being aware of what the requirements are, both from the building department and the fire marshal, that would allow that space to be suitable for infants. And then you have to overlay that with the Department of Licensing for childcare to see what the requirements are for children to be able to stay there during hours of operation. And that will entail the fixtures and the sinks and the hand washing and the diaper changing stations, you see? But first, we have a space. That space that we have to understand, is it zoned or is it licensed? With a zone, okay, I can have this zone is for business. I can have a business here. So what is the chain of command? Who has a say in your plans? The zoning and the building department has a say on your plans. If you're looking to lease a space that was there that appears great for childcare programs, you need to go to the building department. But you also need to understand what were the uses before you come in. You have to find out who were the prior tenants in that space. Certain states and certain cities do not allow a childcare center to occupy a space that was used for a nail salon, a dry cleaner, a laundromat, a car shop, or car mechanics, because they feel that there are fumes that still permeate the space that are dangerous or highly elevated for children. So you need to understand if that space is all zoned for children. Another area that you need to be aware of is that many times there could have been an area that had remediation, meaning there used to be a waste maybe 20, 30 years ago. It could be used as a recycling land 20, 30 years ago. And now the town has taken remediation by browning the field. And by browning the field, they will allow things like a baseball field to be there, a soccer game. They may even allow a commercial space to exist there, but they may not allow an infantile or childcare program to exist. They may feel that the amount of toxicity that the earth is giving off, the methanol and any other type of dangerous gases, the amount is too elevated for an infant classroom, but it can withstand an adult there on a temporary basis, like playing soccer or baseball or being there for a limited amount of time, not an ongoing time. Does that make sense? So you have to know by the building department what that space was used for. You need to walk this. You need to go to the office of records. You need to find out Is there anything that I need to know about the space that could hinder my ability to open my childcare program? Is there any information that I can receive? Any liens that the zoning or the building department has put on that building that will require any new tenant to be responsible for? What are some common liens that a building or zoning department may put on a building? It could be sidewalk remediation. And I'm not just talking about the sidewalk right in front of your building. They may want the sidewalk remediation for the whole block. And so it depends to what extent your remediation is required. Let's say you have a driveway and the driveway is pebble. The town may feel that a lot of cars parking there give off too many gases and therefore will require the driveway to be paved. And that's very expensive because paving the driveway is not just putting a layer of asphalt and being on your way. The layer of asphalt that you put on your home driveway is very different than an asphalt that you put for a commercial space. It has to be a certain level of thickness. True story. When my husband was building a commercial space in the restaurant, he contracted a asphalt company to lay out the parking lot. And what he did is he didn't really look at the plans to understand that there was a level of thickness that the asphalt needed to have. So guess what happened? He went ahead and laid out the whole parking lot, beautiful, black and shiny. But when the inspector came, he didn't meet code. He had to rip up the whole parking lot and re-pour again. Imagine how expensive that was. And that he really didn't make much money on that project. And that's because he didn't pay attention to the detail. And he didn't look at what the town required. He could have been doing it for years. And now there's a new code and a new requirement. You need to become aware of this because that has an impact in your construction. The reason why I was able to build 2 months ahead of schedule is because I had boots on the ground. I built ahead of schedule by having boots on the ground. When you become a director and you take on the ownership of opening up your own childcare program, you cannot bury your head in the sand. You're going to be much more than just an educator. You're going to be a facilities manager, a GC for your construction. You're going to learn how to understand plumbing and understand fixtures because all of those things are integral in passing licensing and getting your CO and getting your permit to be operational and to keep costs down. The fire marshal. The fire marshal is very important because the fire marshal has a lot to do with the egress. Egress is another word to say exit, your exit doors. One of the things for me in building my first childcare center is that I had a window in the infant side of the building where I was building. It was a corner space, like an L shape. But on the short part of it, of the L, there was a window. And I needed another egress in order to be compliant with the building department. Thank God that the window that was there was 36 inches. 36 inches is important because it has to be ADA accessible. The reason why 36 inches is important is because you have to meet the code of disability. You follow me so far? Because the window was 36 inches, we were able to take out that window, put in a door, and be able to use the space for infant and toddler. So you have to be able to look at a space from different angles, speak to your architect, discuss ways that space can be useful to meet your current population and also be flexible to adapt to the changing population. Does that make sense? Fire marshal is going to be there inspecting the sprinkler system. And he's going to want sprinklers at different points of the building, and they have to be connected to the fire alarm panel. If you're in a commercial space with this residential building, most likely your sprinkler system will be connected to the main panel of your building. But otherwise, if it's not connected to the main panel of your building, you need to have a fire panel in your building for the connection of the sprinkler system. The sprinkler system is a very intricate, and every head is pressurized. And it's really important to understand that they're going to want fire sprinkler heads, even in closets. At least for me, they wanted a sprinkler head in a closet. But they're just looking ahead. They want to make sure that the space that you're using and how you're using it is safe for children. You could go to the fire department and to the fire marshal and have a meeting or contract a fire marshal consultant, someone that understands the sprinkler system. A good architect is going to understand how to place the heads across the space to be able to meet the guidelines of safety in order to get your certificate of occupancy. The health department is not the same health department as your child care licensing department. I had to learn that differently. The health department is their own world. Every town has a health department, and many of them may have a direct responsibility over your child care center, And some health departments do not have a direct link to your childcare center, meaning that they may have given that responsibility over to another agency. Either way, you need to contact your health department in your town and speak to a person there and find out, is there anything that you need to do to meet the guidelines of building out a space for your childcare center in that town. And I had to get a letter from the health department that said that the air quality in my space was good. I had to do a water test for the childcare center. I had to do a radon exam for the space. So you hire a company to come to do that. But all of that needs to take place in order to be able to meet the health department requirement that is in your town or municipality. And then is licensing. Licensing is a department that you want to go to with a set of plans before you sign the lease. Let me say that again. Licensing is a department you want to go with a preliminary set of plans before you sign the lease to see if that space will meet the requirements for a childcare center in your area. And folks, oftentimes this is a complimentary service. They will review your plans at no cost. You might have to wait a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, but it's worth doing. And you're saying to yourself, are you telling me that I have to hire an architect before I sign a lease? Yes, yes, and yes. Before you sign a lease, it's worth going ahead and spending the money and getting an architect to give you a preliminary design of the space so you can take it to that licensing department and see if the space will qualify for a childcare center. If the space has the bones needed, the infrastructure needed for you to be successful, and then going through all the various steps. And this is the best money spent. Remember, if you already form your LLC, you already have a bank account, these expenses should be flowing through your bank account as startup costs. All of this is startup costs. And if you're serious about opening up a childcare center, you really need to be serious about spending some money, taking some of your funds in startup costs in identifying and securing a space. Because I'd rather you spend $1,000 now than spend $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 in the build out only to be told, I'm sorry, you can't open. And I've seen that happen too. I've seen centers open thinking that they took all the steps, the building department approved it, the fire marshal approved it, they got the health department involved, they go to the Department of Licensing and licensing, sorry, it doesn't qualify for a childcare center because for us, these were the other criteria that needed to be part of your build out. And what do you say there? What do you do? That's why it's important for you to tune in to Decoding the Childcare Business. If you're enjoying this, please put in the comments below licensing. And you doing that really helps me stay encouraged. Please put that in your comments below, say the word licensing, so we can continue to bring you this wonderful programming. Commercial lingo. We talked about commercial lingo on our prior episode, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. We talked that common area maintenance charges are charges that are in addition to your base rent. These common area maintenance charges are variable cost. They may go up every month or they may go up once a year. You need to understand that and be sure to have that in your lease. You may want to ask, are these costs capped so I can budget myself accordingly? If they're not capped, how often do they go up? Do you have anything or any other tenants where the common area maintenance charges has gone up, and what percentage approximately do they go up every year so I can financially manage my budget? And that's why I said on an earlier conversation, I really would like for you to go ahead and be sure to budget yourself at 70% and budget yourself at 80%, because if you budget yourself and run your business at a 70% capacity, you're going to be in a better position to absorb shocks and unexpected expenses that will arise. Unexpected expenses will be there. They will arise. So I want you to be sure to understand that. And by doing a budget that is sensible, you can get ahead of it. Triple net. We talk about triple net. Triple net is your base rent, your property taxes, and your maintenance. Not all leases include your taxes, but you sure have to pay for your insurance. Triple net includes your base rent, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. For a childcare center, let's not get confused. There's two types of insurance. There is the commercial insurance for your building and your fixtures, as well as your furnishings inside your space. And then there's a childcare business insurance that protects you and the children in your program from medical expenses and staffing and cybersecurity and things like that. There's two types of business insurance that a childcare center carries. We talked about tax abatement in our last conversation, where tax abatement is a benefit that buildings get for either building building additional floors above the residential area landscape. Some areas have a ceiling or a height requirement that you cannot build past. And tax abatement oftentimes enable commercial buildings to bypass that in exchange for giving commercial space to a community. But tax abatement is primarily used to build in spaces that are considered depressed or they're considered development zones, where towns and municipalities want to bring a mix of residential and businesses to the area, incentivize developers to come in and build the space in order to have a greater tax base, a tax revenue. For those developers that are coming to an area that's not yet proven, or the market is depressed, or are creating new markets, and it takes time to build new markets, the town will in exchange give them a tax abatement. And they're hoping that by doing that, the population in the area will grow and they will get back tenfold of what they gave to that commercial space. But tax abatement for childcare centers, the way that it works is that some buildings with tax abatement also have a commitment to a community space. And if you're a childcare center, you meet that community space requirement, at which you can also benefit of having lower taxes. And having lower taxes means that your base rent, your insurance and maintenance will be lower. And it can be for 5, 10, or 15 years. You just want to understand, when do you enter into that space? And as I shared with you, that is something that I was able to benefit from as well. Now, let's take a little moment here to speak about commercial lease math. I went ahead and made a template so you can take a look at that. I know in my prior video, I thought that I had it available to you, but I didn't. So I made sure to have it here now. And what it is, it takes you through the numbers. If you're a visual learner, you can take a picture of this screen, and it helps you understand how the monthly commercial lease rent is calculated when you go and visit a commercial space. When you go and visit a commercial space, and mostly the way that they present it is the rate by square footage. So they will say we have 4,000 square feet at $30 a square foot. In this example, we have 2,500 square feet by $30 a square foot. You take $30 and you time it by 2,500 square foot, and that will give you $75,000. That is not a monthly fee, that is an annual fee. So when you're looking at a commercial space and they're telling you $30 a square feet, and you calculate it to understand what that comes out to be in dollars, you first come to an annualized rate. For you to understand the monthly rate, you divide it by 12. So then you take that lease and you divide it by 12. You take that rate, you divide it by 12, you come out to $6,250. That is your monthly rent. So your monthly rent is calculated by doing what? Taking the square footage, in this case, 2,500, times it by the price per square foot. In this example, is $30. And that will give you $75,000, representing the annual rate of your commercial space. To get to the monthly base, you take that annualized rate and divide it by 12 months, and now you have the 12-month lease by month. Now, we also then went and delved into gross revenue formula, because for me, it's very important for you to understand what your monthly lease is, as well as what is your potential gross revenue. It's always great to know what your 100% gross revenue could look like, understanding that we will not reach 100%, right? That's why I said take 100% and times that by 70 and by 80, and that's what your budget should be based on. In this example, we took an infant room at 12 children, which is $1,000, and then we took a toddler room capacity of 12 children, $1,000 tuition. 12 times 1,000 is 12,000. Then we added a third classroom, a pre-K 3, at 14 children capacity, and we times that by $900, and that came to $12,600. So our infant room of 12 children came to be $12,000 a month. Our toddler room by 12 children times 1,000 came to $12,000 a month. And our 14 children came to $900 a month, to a total of $36,600 a month. So our gross potential revenue, if we were enrolled at 100% capacity, was $36,600 a month. When we times that by 12 months, our annualized revenue at 100% capacity comes to $439,200 a year. Now, the hard truth, don't forget what I said about the hard truth. Your budget should be based on 70 or 80% of your gross potential revenue. And when you do that, you will be able to absorb challenges that are going to come to your program along the way. So you want to take 36,600 and times it by 0.80. That represents 80%. 0.80 represents 80%. By 70%, you're going to take 36,600, which is our monthly 100% gross revenue, times 0.80. That's going to give you a gross revenue of $32,940 a month. Now we've calculated our budget on an 80% revenue. That's important because by understanding where we land at 80%, we can then go from there and calculate our expense for rent or expense for maintenance and insurance and start creating assumptions of costs for staffing. And this will create the profit and loss statement that we need to understand what our net income, what's left after all expenses are paid, looks like. You there with me so far? Oh, take a deep breath. This is really important. And I know that at first it seems a little challenging and difficult and awkward, you will, because you're working through it. But if you take a pen and paper right now and revisit what we talked about right now on your own, and take a phone or calculator and start saying, okay, let me calculate my gross revenue by 60%, 65%. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get. And the better you're going to be at understanding that we're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, folks. You can do it. You'll multitask. You have been able to get here and be here and pay attention. And so don't get discouraged. This was not our tabletop conversation. This was not our table topic conversations, but it is now. And we're getting through it, okay? So now we got the gross revenue formula. And we can move forward to our next slide. Commercial lease. So I'm putting it all together here. All right, so we figured out what a commercial lease is. We calculated it, what it could be on a monthly basis when we are 100% enrolled. Now here we're putting it all together. And we're looking at commercial lease. We talked about what it looks like if we're 100% enrolled. We have here 30 square feet, which we just discussed in our prior slide. We also understand now that once we understand, we also know at this point that as we calculate our annual lease and also calculate our monthly lease, we need to ask the landlord about triple net. What does triple net look like? And what does that mean for us? And then after we consider the triple net, we want to know if our landlord is in any form of arrangement with the town about abatement. And what does that look like for us? How long is the abatement for? And would our lease overlap with the abatement? Or will we have a period where the abatement has expired, which will have an impact on our annual base rent? So this is very important. Some landlords will go ahead and let you participate. Some landlords will have that information right away. Some of them will need to go back to their legal department and ask those questions. Either way, you need to be informed if that space has an abatement and how that impacts your rental expense over time, because it could be a really big number. It could go from $30 a square foot very easily to $60 a square foot because the abatement has expired. And now they're pricing the building at the current tax rate. And when they started, it was 20 years ago. So imagine 20 years ago, they had a tax abatement. Tax has been going up for 20 years. And now you've been able to benefit for the last 10 years on a tax abatement that was priced 20 years ago. Taxes are higher, and now you're paying a higher cost. That's why it's so important to understand if there's any tax abatement that corresponds to your commercial space. When we think about outdoor space, it is so important that you look at the surface of your outdoor space, that you understand that licensing has a requirement for outdoor space by square footage per child. Not all commercial spaces are going to give you an outdoor space, but certain commercial spaces will allow you to share the residential open space area where you can also leverage and use as your own outdoor space. Sometimes if you have a park nearby, the licensing department will allow you to use that park as a space. But not all outdoor parks are made for infants and toddlers. So outdoor parks are really geared to the older age group. So you want to think about your outdoor space and how you can make the outdoor space meet the town, the state, and the Department of Licensing requirement. Now, it doesn't mean that you have 36 children and you need 75 square feet per 36 children. It just means that you should have the square footage of outdoor space to cover a classroom. If you have 12 children in your classroom, that would mean 900 square feet of outdoor space. That means a class of 12 children can go outside together. But if you have 14 children in a classroom, that would be an additional 150 square feet. So you're talking about 1,050 square feet for a whole classroom to go together. That's what outdoor space looks like. And the requirement is not just having a beautiful space with egress that allows you to go outside, that has public transportation, that is built with steel, and it has all of the proper approvals from the building, zoning, and fire marshal. This is where licensing comes in and dictates how much square footage you must have of outdoor space for your children to experience going outside at least twice a day for a full day program, of course, weather permitting. Some states allow a waiver if a public park is within reach, but you have to take that into account. Like I share, not all outdoor spaces are made for infants and toddlers. Also, they wanted outdoor space to be enclosed, safety gates to be 4 to 6 feet high, and they may be able to have like mulch or rubber tile under the equipment. So if you have equipment, you're getting into a whole different set of requirements. Depending on the equipment, you need to have a certain level of thickness for your rubber mats. The rubber mats must be industrialized. There are other outdoor toys and activities that you can also use that will give your children mobility, physical exertion, like mini bikes and balls and soccer balls and playing with basketballs and hoops that children can exert themselves without having the climbing equipment. That can also be a safety issue for you and very costly if your school size is small and your budget is constrained or is limited. Does that make sense? So outdoor space is a requirement for childcare programs. I want to say thank you so much for joining me at Decoding the Childcare Business. There was a lot that we talked about today. There's a lot here to unpack. This was a longer conversation than normal, but I want to thank you for participating in this conversation, which is so important in giving you the legs that you need to build your childcare program. Next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about successful licensing and why it matters and how to look at licensing more critically. And also we're going to have the conversation about the lease and how does the lease come together? What are some of the things that you should ask for or pay attention to the lease as we're building now and getting closer to that start date? Thank you for joining me on Decoding the Childcare Business. I can't wait to meet you.